shout out to all my students who have now completed the first book of the Spiritual Ecology Course, because today we are covering the conclusion in David Abram's book, Becoming Animal. And if you guys are just hopping into the course, check out the link in the description below, hit the subscribe button, or watch the introduction video on the channel to get all of the details. So David wraps all this up in a very beautiful way because he touches upon a lot of the points that we have discussed throughout this course and throughout the book. And the first thing that he mentions is that literature, when translated to Latin, means letter, and letter means fact, according to David's analysis. And this is not an oral culture, because an oral culture has nothing to do with fact. It has to do with having an axiomatic relationship with your local terrain and then creating stories with that. And it's not even a metaphor. Once again, metaphor is rooted in fact and analysis. It's not metaphorical. It's not literal, because oral stories don't even function in that realm. When you involve the whole body, when you involve consciousness and awareness and live performance, none of those things matter. Metaphor and being literal, that doesn't matter. And everyone knows that doesn't matter, except now we have the random goofballs who will say, "Oh, turtles stacked upon other turtles. What a bunch of idiots," or like, "Wow, what a cool tradition." But like, they're calling, anytime you analyze it or try to talk about an oral tradition, you're just, it's never going to work. And we can talk about it and be like, "Wow." It's just a whole different analysis. We can look at Christianity and say, "Wow, that's a bunch of BS," because they actually believed that and became a warring tribe and like pushed that upon other people. And you could say that Native Americans were warring tribes also and maybe pushed their beliefs on other people. But with the lack of time awareness and the lack of the concepts of metaphor and things being literal and fact, and even we could call the scientific method, the Native Americans didn't have the wheel when the Westerners came. There was a lot of things that weren't happening yet in terms of civilization and the quote unquote civilized mind, whatever that means. The civilized mind that had killed billions of innocent people. The civilized mind that killed 300 million people in the 20th century, the innocent people under the hands of government. There's a lot, there's a lot that we can talk about there. But one of the cool things that he talks about, and in this chapter, is that the really scientific atheist types and the New Agers are really no different, because they all have a central focus on themselves. They all, for instance, the scientists, they're all just focused on progress and what it means and objectivity. And that's really just a central focus on the self. And with the New Age, the Maya Enlightenment movement, it's all about gaining more enlightenment, more bliss, all these other things. And none of it is honoring nature. None of it is trying to bring back that connection to the local terrain and what's going on out there. So I thought that, and I've known that forever, that really they aren't different. The counterculture and the consensual reality and the counterculture reality are all the same. They're just two sides of the same coin. And to break out of that, you have to, break down, you have to enter, if they're in a Hegelian dialectic in the line, you have to enter the circle that, is holding the line together. So they vacate the same space in the realm, and they're vacating that space of just selfishness. That's what they're doing. And when we get rid of Christianity and all these other things, this is what has come into play now. And in the old world, in the fallen Christian and Islamic mindset, we are fallen. We live in a fallen, beastly world. All those metaphors that we saw especially in 16th and 15th and 17th century poetry, English poetry and European poetry. And now we live in a purely mechanical world. That's what we've transitioned to with atheism and scientism, and even a lot of New Ageism and law of attractionism, that none of this is in your control, that consciousness is purely subjective, and all these different things that we are living in a deterministic reality. And of course, it's a little bit of a mix of both, that there is some determinism and there's a bit of free will. But when you rest in that middle zone, life is a little bit harder. You can't have all the answers. And that, like, as we talked about last week, that's what we have to accept, though, that we are going to have to live within the mystery. Heading really deep into science can give you some answers. Heading deep into manifestation and spiritual arts can give you a lot of, great results too, and, really drive your consciousness. But at the end of the day, you're not really focusing on what matters most, which is the connection to what we actually can be connected to. Being able to manifest money, being able to manifest whatever you want, or feel a certain bliss doesn't mean that you have a connection to the local terrain, which is, once again, the root of all these different things. We couldn't have scientism. We couldn't have spiritual New Ageism without that. And if you don't have that and you're trying to do those things, you're going to be on a shaky ladder. That's why scientists, atheistic and scientism types and more spiritual types always have so much trauma and so much baggage, and their lives are in shambles. If you look at they don't live very balanced lives, and that's because they don't have a very balanced and grounded point of view in nature. So, and the last thing is just that the animate world versus the inanimate world, us as animate mammals, and then maybe a little bit less animate mammals such as a cat or something, then inanimate beings such as a rock. That's the same comparison. That's the same Hegelian dialectic. It's the good versus the bad. It's the fallen world versus heaven and God. And as we've talked about ad infinitum in this course, everything is animate. Everything has an expressive power. And we are still functioning in a hierarchical Christian religious sense of seeing things in terms of consciousness through language or through certain actions instead of expression. So that's basically it for the course, everybody. And I want to have a quick discussion about the book reports. The book reports, if you guys are actually participating in the writing aspect of this course, I would say they should be anywhere from 700 to 1,200 words. And you guys can pick your own topic. And if you guys don't know what to do, you can always just synthesize a certain school of thought or thinker that you love with David Abram's book or Becoming Animal or a certain concept in the book. You can take, for instance, David's chapter about the shadow and compare it to Carl Jung, or the whole mind chapter has a lot of potent material with Plato and Descartes and any other philosopher. That debate you can bring in Heidegger and the analytics. There's so much you can bring in that sense. Or our detachment from nature is maybe a form of trauma, and then you could show us how to heal that wound from a Freudian, Reichian, Jungian, Ronchian, whatever psychoanalytical lens. You can also take a historical aspect, tracking maybe the oral history of all these different things. That would, historical or oral analysis of what's going on and the pattern of that and you could tie that to psychology too, or philosophy. You could talk about David's just general response to environmentalism. How much did you hear about climate change and protests and all these different things? There was a different approach to how to change the world, and you could really bring that into an academic sense and talk about that and show different results and talk about how without that axiomatic pressure, nothing's going to get done, and maybe talk about other revolutionary groups that had success. If you look at groups that have success, they all share a common core belief, and a lot of the country or a lot of people also share that. But having a spiritual connection and understanding that we are just animals in our spiritual relationship with the environment, that is very hard to find with people. I mean, I'm not even thinking 1 out of 100 have any. I mean, we're probably talking 1 out of 500 or 1,000 type levels with that, and that's just not enough. If we look at the math, I mean, that's 100 out of every million. So 100 times 300 million is, I don't know, 3,000, 30,000 people. Let's just say my math's totally wrong and it's 30,000 people. If we have 30,000 people are not going to make the environmental impact that we need right now. And the way that you figure this out, everybody, is you ask people questions. You have to do an analysis of what their thoughts are. And you've learned how to build a phenomenological consciousness and awareness in this book. You have the tools now. Now you can see if people are actually functioning on this level. We learned at least 12 different main principles here. And if people don't even have, people may have one or two just because it's kind of simple knowledge. But if people aren't getting up into 3, 4, 5, then I don't think they really count. Like everyone, it's pretty easy to be like, everything, oh my God, everything's connected. Or, we are a fallen being, and the scientism and New Age, and the New Agers are all just the same, all the same. Like those are, I mean, a lot of people don't know that, but those are simple, but they need to be stacked on top of each other. Having a relationship with the things in your house, understanding the animate nature of supposedly inanimate things, understanding the moods of nature and how our moods could have been created by observing nature. The act of shape-shifting, the act of the fragmented nature of our consciousness and the liminal space that we can occupy and maybe even shape-shift ourselves. Even just as simple of understanding our shadow. Like I said, you could go chapter by chapter and take the main point out, and those are actually very simple main points that you guys probably knew a lot of before you even began this course. So that's how you can analyze somebody, everybody, and really see how many people are out there that believe these things. So thank you guys for being here. Thank you guys for going through this whole book analysis with me. I'm sure this is going to be 3 or 4 hours long. So I'll see you guys in the next part of the course. We are covering Spell of the Sensuous by David Abram next. Then Mystery Teachings of the Living Earth by John Michael Greer. Then Soulcraft by Bill Plotkin. And then Ecopsychology by Theodore Roszak. If I got all those correct, that is the order. It's probably good. We're going to be stringing those along over the course of the next couple months. A lot of other courses are going to be launching. Check out the Spiritual Ecology of Dune course that has been launched by the time you are hearing this. And that's it, everybody. Stay tuned. Comment what you guys thought of this review, this whole course, this whole book. And I will see you guys maybe when you're writing your essays and in the next video.